Splendid. Okay, well, welcome to the induction meeting, and I have the task of introducing you to the module, really, and just talking to you a little bit about the module, but probably the most important thing that you're interested in, and that is the assignments and what you've got to do, really. But firstly, as I probably haven't met all of you, some of you I've met, some of you I haven't, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Professor Lee Miles. I'm the Professor of Crisis and Disaster Management in the Centre. I've been working on disasters, oh my goodness, for 25 years, I think is probably the best way to put it. So I started working on disasters way back when on the Kosovo and Bosnian crisis, way back in the 1990s, working with military crisis management there. And over time, I've worked on big projects for the United States, for FEMA on Hurricane Katrina. And the most recent projects, to give you an example, we've got a project I'm working on in Africa, in West Africa, looking at resilience and resistance factors in developing countries' disaster management. We have a project in the Caribbean where I did a lot of work for the British Virgin Islands on single points of failure. And also a big project on hotel resilience for the UN, looking at writing the UN standards for hotels and resorts for the United Nations. So those are the kind of things I've been involved in, and it's a pleasure to be working with you over the coming weeks. So I'll be here and there, and I'll certainly be looking at your work. So I look forward to working with you more closely in the future. But I've been, my role here is just to act as an induction module. So firstly, the apologies. This is not going to be the most exciting of seminar presentations or discussions. But what I'm going to do really is just to introduce you to. Hi, Malik. Hope you've joined us and hope you can hear us okay. Malik, can you hear us okay? Okay. Well, what I would like to do. Hi, hello there. Hi. It's Lee Miles here. What I want to do is just to introduce you to the module a little bit about what it does, and then really talk about what this whole module approach, which is actually to develop and prepare the assignment side of it and the work that goes on there. So firstly, you should see in front of you shared screen, which is the MSc in Disaster Management CPD1 unit handbook, and you should be able to find that on Brightspace anyway. And this is probably the most important reference document. So every time you do a module on Brightspace, you should see under the overview and the content section a PDF version of this. So if you're in any ways a little bit confused or want to find out a little bit more about how the module is structured, then this is a good place to start. And this, of course, is one of the two core modules that you'll be doing on the MSc. And as you probably remember from your teaching when you did it in Oman, it's there to give you a broad introduction to the policy, how to do policy and planning in emergency and disaster management. So that's the first thing to say. Hello, Khalifa. Welcome, and I look forward to meeting you. So, the document in front of you. Can anybody not see it? That's probably the best way to do it. Okay, splendid. So that's a good start. So in the handbook itself, you'll see what the learning outcomes are and all those kind of things, and the areas that you'll be covering within it. And that's really what CPD1 was about and the teaching was about. So it introduces you to the broad concepts of disaster management. It introduces you to ideas of risk analysis and hazard mapping, evacuation, mass casualties, and casualty tracking, and other types of international assistance. What I want to concentrate on is actually the thing that you're probably most interested in, which is what you've got to do and what we'll be doing for the next 8 weeks. And you'll see that broadly the module on Brightspace is, if you get onto Brightspace and you've had a look at that on Brightspace, if you have a look on there, you will see that this module called CPD1 and plans, you will see it's wholly designed into 3 parts. The first part is we have a kind of number of sessions where we're introducing you to some of the content. So this is a kind of refresher content, and you've already had access to the virtual learning platform, where you've hopefully done some reading, watch some videos, which will hopefully act as a refresher. And that's really just to bring you up to the content level. Then we will actually have a series of workshops and one-to-ones with you, where we'll be actually concentrating on developing 2 pieces of assignment for the deadline that you've got to put forward. So this is what I really want to talk to you about for the most part. So I'm not really going to talk much about the teaching. I just want to talk to you about what you've got to do in terms of the assignment and the final deadline that you've got to make. Okay? Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit dry. I do apologize there, but I want to make sure everybody's a little bit clear about what we'll be doing. So if you look under section 5 in the unit assessment strategy handbook, you will see that basically this module has 2 assessment pieces that you've got to do: coursework 1 and coursework 2. And by far the biggest piece of coursework that you've got to do is the critical reflection assignment, which is worth 80% of your overall mark. So that's in many ways, your academic essay or your evaluation document that you have to write. So that's the most important thing that we're dealing with. And you will see that the main aspect of this is you're going to be writing an assignment looking at the key issues relating to the formulating, writing and implementing of an emergency plan for a relevant organisation. And secondly, potential and real implications for the wider use of crisis and disaster management training. So the vast majority of the marks and the vast majority of what we'll be doing in the assignment, once we've done 3 seminars, will be actually to cover that. Okay. And the second piece of work that we'll be doing is actually based around the evaluation, which is actually looking at a 500-word informative abstract that actually reflects upon your experiences of the exercise umbrella simulation and the opportunities and challenges for policymakers taken for the development of a national risk reduction strategy. So 2 parts of the assessment: 80%, this is the most important one, and you have to write up to 4,500 words, and then a much smaller sort of reflective piece, which is around a minimum of 500 words. We usually can allow you to go up to about 800 words, which is worth 20% of your overall mark. So, and we'll be developing those after we've done the content seminars, where we'll have one-to-ones and we'll look at drafts and we'll develop them further. So if you don't mind, I'm now going to talk a little bit more about what we expect for the big piece. And in terms of your time, I would urge you strongly to never underestimate that the vast majority of your marks is on this first piece of work. Okay, everybody clear with me so far? Okay, so this is an academic piece, and therefore you'll have to include an extensive bibliography of reading. And you will see on Brightspace there's a big, rather large bibliography which you can use, and we'll actually those, but we'll be looking at David Alexander's most recent book, which talks about how to write an emergency plan to get us started. So the main part of the assignment, if you like, there's 2 parts to this first assignment, but the vast majority of it, sort of 75% of the overall piece of work of 4,500 words, is I want you to critically evaluate the process of formulating and writing an emergency plan using a discussion of the relevant principles, operating procedures, and associated protocols and policy domains. Now, the reason why it talks about that is because in the seminars that we're going to have over the next few weeks, we're going to use David Alexander's book, How to Write an Emergency Plan, published very recently, and it does actually deal with relevant principles, operating procedures, and associated protocols and domains. So everything we do in the seminars is not just to talk about disaster management, but it's designed to support the writing pieces that you've got to do. So we want you, therefore, to concentrate on formulating, writing, and implementing an emergency plan, and looking at principles, procedures, and protocols. Okay. And what we actually want you to do is, where appropriate, and using the supplied documentation, so you will actually see on Brightspace, there will actually be a list of about 8 different emergency plans, and they're from Africa, they're from India, they're from parts of the world, and we want, and it may actually be your own country that you choose. We want to actually use to pick probably 2 of those emergency plans, and therefore to analyze them in relation to these principles, operating procedures, and protocols. So within this first part of the work is we need to talk about the principles of actually doing it, and then we wanted you to take 1 or 2 examples of real emergency plans and apply and look at them, and to say where the challenges are in terms of principles, in terms of procedures and protocols. And what we want you to do is to draw out the strengths and the weaknesses of those respective plans. How good are they at dealing with principles? How good are they at setting out the process of making an emergency plan work? And how good are they in terms of the kind of strategy that they want to adopt? Okay, so it should be clear that this first part of this big piece of work, we want you to use David Alexander's work, and we also want you to use at least 2 real emergency plans and look at the principles, operating procedures, and associated protocols. And all of that should hopefully be on Brightspace for you. So get used to using Brightspace. Okay. And it's recommended that of the 4,500 words, and what I would say is there's usually about 500 words on a typed A4-sided piece of paper. So you can see that your essay is going to be 4,500 words, roughly around 9 pages long, excluding the bibliography, so maybe 10 or 11 pages in total, of which the vast majority of those pages, up to 3,500 words of it, will be on writing an emergency plan. Okay. And the second part of this assignment, so it's one assignment, but the second part that is actually that once you've looked at the strengths and weaknesses of writing and implementing an emergency plan, then we formulating and writing an emergency plan, we want you then to look at how you implement it, and in particular what this would mean for training. How do you actually design training and exercising to ensure that the writing, formulating and principles of an emergency plan are trained upon? So this second part is to look at how you actually train to make an emergency plan work, and equally how an emergency plan may need to change in relation to the training, feedback, simulations, and other ways that you try to do it. So that's a much smaller part of the essay, but it's the logic of what you'll be doing in the first part, and that's up to 1,000 words. Okay, so you should be able to find this all hopefully on page 8 of the handbook. But what I'm trying to say is that the biggest part of your assessment is coursework 1. It has 2 parts, 2 within it, and the most important point is about looking at formulating and writing an emergency plan. So look at the academic work, look at 2 real plans, compare and contrast them, analyze them, and then look at what it means for training and training implications of how you actually exercise to make an emergency plan work or not. Okay, so I'll stop there for one moment. Are there any questions at all? Is everybody a little bit clearer about what you've got to do?
So far, yeah.
Any questions at all? Okay, I'll take that to no news is good news. So or you either have got a clear idea of what we've got to do. And the second coursework, the smaller one, is that you're to develop a concise 500-word abstract that identifies how the exercise, that reflects upon the exercise, okay, and looks at the relationship between the exercise and its development of a national risk reduction strategy. In other words, what you can take from the exercise that you did and what they would need to do, and what those reflections mean when you think about a national risk reduction strategy for the future. So within this 500 words, and we allow you up to about 800 words. So between the 500 to 800 words, we want you to look at three things. the opportunities for developing a risk reduction strategy, the challenges in delivering it, things like issues of ownership, integration, how you integrate stakeholders and how you actually coordinate them, and possible future reform. In other words, if you look at the scenario, what were the strengths that came from it? How would that be built into a risk reduction strategy? And what would you need to do now, and what you might need to reform in the future? So this is a reflective piece, really. And the bibliography that you'll need to include do not form part of the word count. So although you won't have used any, let me see, any articles in the exercise or anything like that, quite rightly, the idea is that because this is an academic piece of work that could be looked at by an external examiner, we want you to include a bibliography of anything that you've read. So there you might put David Alexander's book, you might put anything, you might put your national merger, you might put stuff on Sendai about national risk reduction strategies, anything that has influenced them. Okay, so that second piece is much smaller, it's much more reflective, and it's about looking at these three elements: opportunities, challenges, and possibilities, and they're outlined there on your handout there in the handbook. But the most important thing of all, and I can't stress this enough, is that there's a single deadline for both pieces of work. So at the end of the course, that's Monday the 30th of April at 12 noon UK time. Okay, so you can use, the idea is that okay, everybody got that? Monday the 30th of April at 12 noon UK GMT time. Okay, and you actually upload those pieces of work onto Brightspace.
Excuse me, Prof. It's for last,
Yeah.
I think, last cohort. I was at 23rd of November this year.
Yes. Deadline.
I'm sorry?
I'm talking about deadline. This is the for old one. This is the old one. I was at 23rd of November.
You've got, sorry, Monday the 30th of April 2018 in the handbook. Can you see the handbook there in front of you?
For us, it's different. This for last one.
Oh, I do apologise. I'm sorry, I've been. Yes, that's an old deadline.
It's okay. It's
My
23rd of November.
Sorry, I've been sent the wrong version. So the deadline is in November. I do, I do apologise there. Thank you so much for pointing that out. The important thing to recognise. Would you just repeat the deadline for me, my friend? What have you got there in front of you?
23rd of November.
Thank you. So it's Monday, the 23rd of November at 12 noon UK time. Okay. Okay. So this is the handbook that was sent to me by Richard, not the one that you've got on Brightspace, of course. So the important thing for you to recognise there is that there's one deadline for both pieces of work. Okay, and you upload them onto Brightspace. Okay, so it's very simple. You'll find that on Brightspace, under the assessment, there's actually two places for you to and you submit them there. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we will have a number of contents seminars at the start where we work through David Alexander's chapters. To give us an idea of the kind of to refresh you all, and actually the work has slightly been designed so this acts as a launch pad, and then we'll have a series of one-to-ones, and we'll ask you to submit various deadlines where you will actually then be able to work with me and with Richard and with others to develop your manuscripts, to develop your assignments ready for the final deadline. So you're not on your own. It's not a case of basically you will have specific one-to-ones where we discuss your drafts. Okay, as you know, there's been a previous cohort. They've completed CPD1 and were very successful at it. So it's worked rather well, and I hope it will work rather well with you as well. Okay, so the important thing to recognise is that that second piece of work here is worth 20% of your overall mark. And at the back of the handbook, you'll see that there's a couple of sheets that you can put on the front of your essays when you submit it. But the most important thing to recognise is to understand about the deadlines, okay? And the deadline in November, and that it's one deadline for both. Okay.
Okay.
Are there any questions or anything you'd like to ask me? Okay.
Thank you.
So the idea really, just to repeat this and just to show, is that if you look at the assessment, the way it works is it logically follows in a pattern. We start off by looking at having a few seminars where we will look at the formulation, writing, and implementing an emergency plan. And we'll talk about it in relation to your own organisation, because of course, you know, you've got people with a very different experiences, and you may do different slightly writing of your own different plans slightly differently. And then we'll ask you to compare and contrast two real ones that are available on Brightspace. You may want to use your own if you've got availability of that. And then we will ask you to look at the relationship between that and training. So the idea, therefore, is we have an idea about what an emergency plan is supposed to do, what are the main elements of it, and how are the challenges in writing and implementing it. And then the second piece of work is very much about understanding about you've done an exercise, and you've also had an idea about writing an abstract about how you reflect upon, well, how do we actually exercise to make an emergency plan work? So you'll see in that second part, looking about its relationship between the emergency plan and a risk reduction strategy. Okay. Ahmed, did you want to say something at all?
I am following with you on my phone, but as well, I am trying to access the university website as well and get the same handbook. And you said it is available on the Brightspace, is it?
Yeah, it's available on Brightspace.
That's what I'm trying to. Anyhow, but I'm following from my mobile. Anyhow.
Oh. So if I go into, let me see. Let's see if we can do this then. I will try and join Brightspace for you from my perspective. So if you forgive me for a moment, I'll keep talking in the background if you know. Whoops. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Splendid. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go into this, to this. So you can, I'm joining Brightspace in as you would, or we do in your own system. So here I am in Brightspace. We should have here. Developing policies and plans 18, developing some policies 17, 18. Just give me 1 second. I should be able to go to here. There you are. That's your module.
Yeah.
Okay. So you will see at the top here under content, in policies and plans, you will see here is here on the left hand side, here is the unit handbook. So this is the one. So this is the one. There you got it. So can everybody see this, by the way, or am I just talking to Hamid? But there, here we are. Here's the module handbook. So if you look at the module handbook itself here, the way that we're looking at the way this is put forward, I'm just going to make sure that the deadline is correct that we've got there in front of you. Well, thank you. I think you pointed out that there is a discrepancy on the system there, which I will need to raise with Richard. So the deadline is in November, but the actual handbook itself has the wrong date in it. So I will get that report that to Richard and get that sorted out for you. There's one thing I probably would like to just have one small chat with you about here, and that is that you will see the unit disaster management program handbook also appear and be put on here. And the important thing with that handbook, when it appears on your system, is it actually outlines what the differences in terms of the assessment are. And what I mean by that is the level of marks that you can get. So it's probably worth explaining that an MSc in disaster management, there's a kind of different levels. And the first level is that if you get below 50% as your mark, then that would be regarded as being a fail. Okay. But between 50 and 59%, that you would get a pass in disaster management.
Only.
Yeah. Between 60 and 69%, you get an MSc in disaster management with a merit. And if you get above 70%, then you will get a MSc in disaster management with distinction. Okay. So there's actually classifications, and that will be outlined in the program handbooks. But broadly, whenever you get a mark, what you're looking for is that everything should be above 50%, i.e., past the you're operating at master's level. And then basically, if you are operating and get 60% in your assignment, then you're operating at a higher level. You're operating at a disaster management master's with merit. And if you get above 70%, as some people have done in the previous cohort, so you should be aware that this is perfectly realistic, then actually you're operating with a master's with distinction. Okay, so I just thought it probably worth mentioning it to you there, so you have a clear idea. And the disaster management program handbook will go on hopefully by tomorrow, and will be available for you there as well. Okay, so my job there is just to make sure that you are familiar with the work that you've got to do. I'm just going to have a look and see if it's under the assessment here. So here, if you want to have further details on each of the assignments, if you have a look here also under the assignments on the left, you will also see that here, here they are. So here we are, here's the most modern version. So here you can see under assignment 1, you will have a list of what you have to do. So just as I explain what you have to do, there is your deadline. As Hamed kindly said, Friday the 23rd of November at 12 noon, and you will see the pieces of work that you've got to do there. Okay, which is exactly what we talked about before. Okay, so the idea really is that we're going to work with you on this to produce some really good pieces of work, and we'll provide you with a basic understanding about the challenges academically and also practically of writing emergency plans. And of course, the important thing I should say, although this is a master's, there's also a very strong professional practice element to it. So you're all experts in your own right. You've all got major experiences within your own organisation about maybe how to deal with emergency management. And of course, you've all experienced dealing with most recent issues like cyclones, for example, and therefore you'll be able to build those examples into the kind of work that you'll be doing. But this is the place we start with writing and the training implications of an emergency plan. Okay, so get used to looking around Brightspace. All of the information should be available there for you. But if you have any questions, then please feel free to get in touch with us and myself. Now, you'll also see you'll be asked over the coming weeks to look at particular works, and the most important, what we're going to use is a core book to look at this. So when we're looking at our seminars on writing an emergency plan, then you will see you have available on Brightspace access to David Alexander's book, and in particular the relevant chapters. Okay, so what we'll be doing is looking at in particular sections of that book which help us to think about how to formulate, write and implement an emergency plan. What is its plan, how to write it, what are the process, and what do we need to include within its elements. So a good place to start is for you to start also having a look at that book that's available on Brightspace. And you will also see, as part of the upcoming weeks, that you'll be asked to look at respective chapters of that book. Okay. All right. So a good place to start, if you have time over the coming weeks, over the coming week, is to start by reading the first 3 chapters of David Alexander's book as well. Okay. Is everybody clear or has an idea about what we're about? And are there any questions that are particularly important that you'd like to ask now?
Yeah.
Everybody happy?
I just missed the information. From where can I download that book?
Oh, yes. So I'm in Brightspace now. It's on Brightspace here. So you should be able to see what I can see. Okay. So I'm actually in Brightspace now. And there you'll see here, there's a book here, BUDMC book.
Oh, yeah.
How to write an emergency plan. Click on that.
Sure.
And it opens in 2 parts. It's the same book, but it's 1 to 80, 81 to 180. So you'll be asked in the first seminar, we'll be looking at the first part. Okay. So you just click on that.
Okay.
And there you should be able to get a hold of the book. Okay. There it is. Okay. And also, just to show you, just while we're together, fingers crossed if everything goes well. Yep. When we talked about, when I was talking about assignment 1, I talked about the different plans. In here are some of the plans you can look at. Okay. So in your assignment, where when you asked you to compare and contrast plans, you'll be able, if you wanted to look at Ghana's disaster emergency plan, then there it is. Okay. So we'll ask you in the essay, for example, assignment 1, to pick a couple of disaster management plans to compare and contrast them according to the principles, processes, and there they are for you. So hopefully most of the materials that you're going to need for the first part of the assignment, at least to get you up to speed as a basic level, are there. Okay, on Brightspace. Can everybody see that document I've got in front of you? So there I've got out of Ghana, and if I go down to the national plans, you'll also see, for example, if you wanted to look at Canada's, then again, Canada's plan is available there. Okay. So my apologies for the slight confusion about the deadline. That's because there is a slight error in the handbook that's on Brightspace. But the main place for you to look for would be, I would suggest, we'll get that amended for you. But if you do want to know anything about the assessments, then if you go into the assessment column here on the left, there's actually coursework 1 and coursework 2, and everything I've explained to you there is also there in writing for you as well. Okay. So all I've tried to do really is to give you a kind of broad introduction to the kind of work that we have available and how you can access these materials as you want. So there you'll see assignment 1, click on that, and there is in front of you is exactly the same what you've got to do for assignment 1. Okay, so have a look at the handbook, have a look at Brightspace, everything you should need to be on there. I will be meeting you later on in the week to discuss to be involved in discussions with you in the seminars, and actually this PowerPoints that I'll also be using in those can actually be seen. What we've done here is we've provided you with all of the slides that were part of the course that you did some time ago. So if you want to actually remember after you've looked at the EP Learning site, so you've looked at some videos, but if you want to have a refresh of the lectures that you did with Richard in Oman, then those lecture slides are there for you as well. So you've got the lecture slides there. On the left here, you've got the handbook, the assessment, the slides, the BUDMC book, how to write an emergency plan, and the National Plans Library. Okay, and you will also see, hopefully, that there's also any unit information you need will be available here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to end with fingers crossed. Are there any points that you'd like to raise at all? Any questions, any queries? Is everything okay with you at this point in time? Okay.
Excuse me, briefly.
Yes, okay.
I just want to ask about assessment 1. If you want our experience, some of us, some of my colleagues have experienced for some disasters previously. So if we want to put our experience, there's no reference for it. So just put it, or what we have to do.
Yeah,
I'm
going into this again, so thank you for that. Yeah, you'll see here that we're in the first part here, which is about writing an emergency plan and the training section here. Then, of course, you can use your own examples as well. I mean, the whole point is that this is a specialized course for practitioners as well. You all have a great deal of experiences. And when in the seminars, I'll be asking you to reflect upon your own experiences there. So you can use examples from your own experiences with your own respective organizations when we talk about the principles, the procedures, and the protocols. That's absolutely fine. It's just that we would like you also to compare and contrast them. So it doesn't just become about how things work in Oman, but you also are able to see how emergency plans are organized and the strengths and weaknesses of them in other countries. Okay, so that's the idea as well. So by all means, we would encourage you to use examples from your own countries, from your own organizations as well. Okay. Any other questions? But anyway, it's a difficult position at the moment because, of course, there's the fear of the unknown. But what we can say is that, as you know, the training module has been running for a considerable amount of time. We've worked with Omanis on these kind of aspects for a considerable amount of time. This module has also run with a previous cohort online successfully. So we really look forward to working with you. I personally always look forward to working with you guys in particular, simply because I learn as well about all the things that are going on. And the idea is that together we will develop some really good pieces of assignments and help to further professionalize the work that you're doing there in Oman. Okay. So I'm going to, if that's possible, just say to everybody, I hope everything that's been acceptable. I hope that's been clear. Please feel free to pick things up with Richard as the module coordinator if you're not. And I look forward to meeting you later on when we talk about in the first seminars that take place on policies and processes. So good luck with that. Have a look. Good luck. And I would start by having a read of the Emergency Plan book by David Alexander and the first few chapters if you have time. Okay. Welcome, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again. Take care now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.